Hey folks, I summited Mount Katahdin on September 10th. Yahoo! It was everything I hoped it would be, and I think every state threw everything it had at me. Every inch of that trail lived up to its reputation. I'm glad I had it that way. I enjoyed it. I appreciate it more now than I ever did. I wouldn't do it again, but I'm glad I did it. I just wouldn't do it again. I thought it was prudent to do a couple of gear review videos, and I'm going to start with the big three: the pack, the shelter, and the sleep system, and all the items associated with those three things. And then we'll carry the next video into everything else that the pack contained. But for now, it's the big three. Hope you enjoy it. First up, the ground cloth. A Tyvek, a piece of Tyvek. I happened upon a construction site that was wrapping a condo in Tyvek, and they were cutting out the windows, and I thought, you know, that's the perfect size for the footprint of my tent. I went over, asked them, did they have any scraps? They pointed to a pile. I picked one up. I took it, I brought it home, I cut it to the size of my footprint, the basin on my tent. This helped protect it not just from getting extra wear and tear on the bottom of the tent, but it kept it much cleaner when it came time to wrap it up in the morning, especially after it rained the night before and there was mud everywhere. The tent stayed a lot cleaner by using this. I highly recommend the ground cloth. Tyvek, worth every penny I paid for it. Next up, my zpacks duplex tent. Love this thing. Just the right size, perfect for one person and gear. I don't think it's a two-person tent. I think it's a 1.5-person tent, but one person in gear. Had no problems with it. It never leaked until the last 100 miles, maybe 150 miles. I was in Maine, and I had some rain one night, and all of a sudden water was in the bottom of the tent, but it hadn't come in through the netting anywhere on the side. And I didn't understand how it got in until I got home, hung it up in the garage to let it get cleaned up, and discovered I had about 9 holes in the bottom of it. What happened was, in Maine, you're gonna park your tent somewhere on roots and rocks. Hardly avoidable. Even with the Tyvek as an extra barrier, there's going to get some wear spots. And I found about 9 very small holes I identified on the bottom of my tent when I got home. And it was just enough to let some water seep in on a rainy day. Only happened once or twice because it only happened in the last 2 years. It lasted 2,000 miles before that happened. So I still highly recommend this. I was able to patch up the tent right here in the garage, and we'll see how it works next time I use it. The stuff sack that comes with the zpacks duplex tent is made from a thinner Dyneema composite material. It didn't hold up very well. It started showing holes and wear and tear as early as Tennessee. By the time I got to Maine, the drawstring had broken off of it. It was just falling apart. I replaced it with a generic stuff sack that I bought in Monson. I mean, I'm literally 100 miles from finishing the hike, and I'm buying a stuff sack for my tent. At least I've got something to keep it protected. You definitely want to keep your tent in something. Keeps the rain out of it, so that if it does rain during the day, when you set your tent up, hopefully it's not as wet. It'll stay dry for you. Okay, the zpacks Arc Blast pack. Love this thing. It's very light, hardly weighs anything. Best part about it. I will tell you that the shoulder straps and the adjustment straps over time tend to come loose a little quicker than you want. In fact, by the time I got to Maine, I was making adjustments to these things about every 15 minutes. I'd have to straighten something and pull something. It may have had something to do with the fact that I was carrying a little more weight at the end than I was at the beginning. I think I started the trail with about 26 pounds on here. By the time I got to the end, I was getting closer to 35, 36 pounds. Carry a lot more food in the end than you do in the beginning, and that was the reason why. But that was the first thing, probably the most annoying thing, was that just having to constantly make adjustments. Otherwise, it starts to run wear on your shoulders a little bit tougher than it should. The second thing is, it showed some extreme wear on the waist belt. You can see right here. The waist belt rubs against these buckles on the corner. Now, when I got to Damascus, I showed it to zpacks. They instantly replaced the belt, even though this was out of warranty. I bought this, I think, in late 18, early 19, with plans to hike in 20. And because of COVID, of course, I postponed it a year, so all of my gear was out of warranty by the time I actually got to use it. But they replaced the belt, and they did that free of charge. So kudos to zpacks for that. But by the time I got to Katahdin, those same wear spots were showing up. It may have been a design flaw because I believe I saw somebody else's zpacks Arc Blast pack, and these buckles had been relocated into a different position, different configuration, and theirs didn't look like it was wearing at all. So I think they had fixed the problem, so I wouldn't worry about it so much, but they did replace that for me. The next thing was, you'll notice there is no net here. Here's the net. The buckle that holds this net down here somewhere broke when I was in Maine. It just snapped one day, and so the arc was rendered useless. I could no longer arc the pack. About an hour after that happened, the strap buckle broke, and so I had to sit down in the trail and rig the strap to a buckle that the net was previously attached to. It wasn't the broken one, and I was able to continue hiking. This rode against my back. Not that bad. Honestly, it was no different than what, maybe a Hyperlite, which rides against your back, was. It didn't bother me. I handled the last 150, 200 miles with it just like that. Would I like to have arced it? There were times when it would have been nice, but I don't think it was that big a deal. At that point, my mind was on the finish line. It had nothing to do with how the pack's riding, so I won't fault them for that. But it did finish without any problem, and sometimes gear is only meant to last 2,000 miles instead of 2,200. But it did well. I'm glad I bought this. Also part of my storage was the fupa. I bought this and used it to replace the belt pouch on one side. The fupa is phenomenal because it's separately attached to your waist with a separate belt, so I could wear it off to the side and then slide it around front for easy access. In here I carried my phone, my glasses, my wallet, snacks, lunch. It was even big enough to hold that titanium Toke's titanium spoon, the long handle spoon. It fit in here diagonally, so I didn't have to go to my food bag every time I needed it if I just wanted to eat out of a tuna pouch or something like that. So this was great. You can use it to wear around town. It held up great. Highly recommend the fupa. Now, one other thing I want to point out, these little zipper pulls. My niece, who's a genius by the way, everybody in the family wanted to give me something as a gift. And she was the one who did her research and said, whatever I give him, it's got to be lightweight. She knew me well. She made these out of what they make friendship bracelets out of, okay? 12 years old, she made zipper pulls for my fupa and the belt pouch on my pack, okay? So I had these anytime the brilliant part about this is that you can look down and in a glance, if you see two of these, you know the pouch is closed. If you only see one, that means the pouch is open and you're likely to lose something that's in there. So this had a dual purpose. It gave me the confidence to know that my pouches were always closed, and it made it easier to reach, grab, open, and close. So thank you, Caitlin, you're a genius. Tent stakes. I bought the ones that look like 16-penny nails, okay? First of all, they come with a red thread attached to the top. I have no idea what that's for. Honestly, no clue. Some of them broke off. But I bought 9 of them. And I bought 9 of them because I wanted to have a spare, number one, in case I lose one. And number two, I wanted to use it for my PCT hang, okay? Instead of a stick, you use a stake because it's smoother. It's a lot easier to get off of the rope when you're ready to bring the bag down. So it'll slide in and out a lot quicker with this than it would with a stick off the ground. At some point I lost one, so now I was down to 8, which was fine because I only needed 8 for the tent. Then I broke one. I didn't know, but this silver piece up here is a separate piece from the center down here, okay? This screws in. I can't unscrew this one, but it screws in, and it's only about that long. Well, I took a rock and I was hammering it into a hard surface, into a ground, and broke it right off, rendering it useless. So I bought an 85-cent shepherd's hook at Walmart. Then I broke another one. I had no idea how. I just opened the bag one day and one of them was busted in half. Ridge Runner gave me a spare groundhog. So I ended up with 6 of the tent stakes from zpacks, one from Walmart and one from a Ridge Runner. And I would still highly recommend these. They were great, they're lightweight, just don't hammer them with a rock. Something else pack related. The compactor trash bag acting as a pack liner. I'm glad I bought this. I bought a roll of them. I only needed one, it never leaked. The only things that I put in this, and this was stated in the pack the whole time, was my quilt, my sleeping bag liner, my dry clothes, which were in a separate dry bag as well, my sleeping pad, my pillow, the pump sack that inflates the sleeping pad, and my electronics. All of that went in this and then rolled down, and it only took up the bottom third of the pack. Then I had room for everything else that I needed to put in there, food bag and other things. But this was phenomenal. Definitely worth having. The pack itself doesn't leak, but there were times when water would get in there because every time you open your pack in the rain to get something out or put something in, water's going to get in there. This kept the most important stuff that needed to stay dry, dry. The Thermarest Neo Air X-Lite Inflatable Sleeping Pad. It started out great, but there were some problems. It's narrower than I'd like it to be. I tend to be a back sleeper, and if I sleep on my back, want to put my hands on my chest, my elbows are not supported by the pad. They will fall off, so it becomes a little uncomfortable. It was annoying. At some point, I started using a dry bag of clothing on one side and my quilt bag on the other, stuffed with a puffy or something, just to give my elbows some support when I sleep on my back. So the narrowness of this bag was problematic. We'll call it that. The biggest problem, however, happened just before Damascus when it started developing slow leaks. And I would have to wake up 3 to 4 times a night to reinflate this thing. Now that's a problem, okay? I'm not sure how it happened. Can't find the holes because I don't have a swimming pool accessible to me on the trail. Couldn't get it patched without knowing where the holes were. So I had to replace it. And I had my son send me his. He sent me the Thermarest X-Therm, which is the full-size pad. Now, at first when I got it, I thought, oh man, this thing's going to be heavier, it's longer, it's wider. Well, it is all of those things. Thicker, longer, wider, but I could sleep on my back and it supported my elbows. That itself was a game changer. I didn't care that it cost an extra 5 ounces to carry. It was a 6.2 R value, so it's going to keep me warm. It held up beautifully the rest of the hike. Buck up, buddy. 10 hours a night, you're going to sleep on that thing. It is worth the comfort level to have that X-Therm as a full-size pad versus these things just to save a few ounces. Wasn't worth it. I would go back and buy the X-Therm before I bought the X-Lite. It was absolutely the best improvement that I had gear-wise on the trail. The pump sack. The pump sack is what you use to inflate your pads with. I bought this one separately just before I left for the trail because my X-Lite did not come with one. And when I bought this, I thought, this is huge. Do I really want to carry this? Well, it only took 4 of these pumps to inflate that X-Lite. When I got the X-Therm, my son sent me the pump sack that came with it. And it was smaller. It was a bigger pad and a smaller pump sack. It took me 14 of those sacks to fill the X-Therm. This is the one you want. You don't want the one that comes with the X-Therm, and I don't even know if they still sell it that way because his was rather old. But believe me, the bigger one, far worth the difference in weight to carry, to be able to reinflate, to be able to inflate your X-Therm. So highly recommend the bigger pump sack. The Enlightened Equipment 20-degree Enigma down quilt. This, I was concerned, you know, should I buy 2 of them, a 20-degree and a 40-degree? I heard a lot of people doing that. Send one home, send the other one back, send that one back home, send the other one back again. I decided, no, I'm just going to carry that 20-degree the whole time. I'd rather be too warm than not warm enough and carry it the entire time, which I did. So this was phenomenal. This held up great. I have no holes. I have no problems with it. It kept me very warm in Georgia, North Carolina, and Tennessee, where the coldest months were. When I got to New Hampshire and Maine, again, it kept me very warm. The center part of the trail, I only used it to cover on my chest. When my legs would touch this thing, my legs would start sweating. It's probably just me, but I tend to not use it at all on my legs. I needed my feet to breathe, so I didn't completely cover up with it. I didn't use the foot box through half the center states on the trail, but I highly recommend this. This was great. One other thing that I purchased was the Sea to Summit 20-degree bag liner, sleeping bag liner. I bought this as an extra layer of warmth for those early months. Glad I had it. I thought about just using this, and I tried a couple of times in the middle states. Instead of pulling my quilt out, just using this. And that worked okay a couple of times, but honestly, I just needed something on my chest. My legs can stay cold all night long. They don't get cold, so they're fine. I would have sent this home with my winter clothing and then had it sent back to me when I got to New England. I didn't. I carried it the whole time and probably didn't use it from Virginia through Connecticut, okay, or Massachusetts, somewhere up there before I used it again. I didn't really need it a whole lot towards the end of the trail. I finished the trail on September 10th. It hadn't gotten brutally cold yet. It was only cold on mountaintops, but not when you're near shelters or in the valleys. I started the trail with a Trekology inflatable pillow. It's a $15 pillow. It's kind of a knockoff to a Sea to Summit or a Thermarest or something like that. It developed slow leaks at the same time as my Thermarest X-Lite pad did, okay? Same time, almost the same day I started getting slow leak, having to reinflate it in the middle of the night. That got old pretty quick. Another hiker heard me talking about it, and she had an extra Thermarest pillow. Solar and Squeeze, thank you for this. This lasted all the way to Katahdin. So this was a great pillow. Highly recommend the Thermarest inflatable pillow. And thanks again to Solar and Squeeze for that. So that's it for the big three. This video covers the pack, the shelter, and the sleep system. The next video will cover everything else, okay? Everything that I kept, threw away, gave away, sent home, had bought on the trail, replaced, all of that other stuff will come in the next video. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next time.